While it's true that this is still in the experimental phase and there are some limitations, as we saw in the previous video, this is still very, very functional. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take the code from the first video and modify it a little bit. We're going to add some buttons on the top and add some pins in Chicago, Lansing, Detroit. When we click the buttons, it'll move to that point and zoom in. Let's go ahead and get started here. All right, first thing we need to do is make our variables. We need some way of actually controlling this map. So we need a map controller. Along with a, you guessed it, a map of actual coordinates. Call that chords. And let's make a list of markers. Going to have to initialize our state. We're going to make the map controller. And let's go ahead and actually fill in our coordinates. We're going to add some coordinates in here. We're going to put if absent, and let's add Chicago first. So there's Chicago, and let's get rid of this right here. I always wish they had a different syntax for this. It always kind of throws me off. All right, so we're going to add our lat long, and because I don't have latitude and longitude coordinates memorized, we're just going to copy and paste that. Let's grab that. Totally missed the first letter on that. We'll add Detroit and Lansing. Okay, so we've got our controller, our coordinates. Now we need our markers. Whoops, kind of got a little ahead of ourselves there. There we go, and screwed that one up too. Wow, all right, glad we caught that. That might have been a pain debugging later. So this is why you put things into a list. I get a lot of emails saying, hey, why do you do things in lists instead of just typing them in? And this is why, if we wanted to actually add things into the future, we just add them into this list rather than having to hard code and recompile it. I know that these are hard coded in, but because they're part of a map, we can actually just add to them in the future if we really, really felt like it. So we're going to add to our markers here. This code's going to look very similar to what we had before because, well, it is almost identical. We're just adding it into a list here. And of course, we need our builder. All right, so we've got everything we need in there. Now, what we need is a method of actually, whoops, hit the wrong button, method of actually moving the map around. So we're going to say show chord. And in here, we're going to use the map controller. We're going to call the move function. Notice how it wants a latitude, longitude, and a zoom level. So we're going to just say chords values dot element at and whatever the index is, and let's set the default zoom to, why not 10? Now you should know, in order to actually use the map controller, we're going to have to modify down here. So in Flutter Map, right before our options, we're going to say map controller. We'll just add that in. If you don't, you're going to get a null exemption. It's just going to say object doesn't exist, and you're going to go crazy trying to figure out why it doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and make our buttons now. And we're going to say make buttons. And we're just going to copy this, that way I don't have to type it. Once we've got our list, we're going to say for int I and we're just going to make some buttons here. And the on pressed, we want to do show chord. There we go. And for our text, we just want the key value here. So we'll say chords, keys, element at, and our current index. So it should be pretty self-explanatory what's going on there, but if not, really all we're doing is we're going over our coordinates, which are up here, Chicago, Detroit, Lansing, and we're adding a raised button into a list of widgets. And the on pressed of each button is going to coordinate with the different coordinate, Chicago, Detroit, Lansing, and we're going to actually just display that text. All right, we've got that in there. Now we need to finish up our interface. So we've got a flexible and a column here. Let's add it right here. Now for the children, instead of this list of widgets here, what we're going to do is we're going to say make buttons. Let's actually rebuild that whole thing from scratch. Now we have 3 beautiful buttons. Oh, we don't have our markers in there. Let's go ahead and add those in. Markers equals, oops. We want marker layer options. There we go. That way we can actually see the points on the map that we're going to go to. And let's just reload that whole app just to make sure everything's working. All right, now we've got Chicago, Lansing, Detroit. So let's zoom to Chicago. We can zoom to Detroit. And we can zoom to Lansing. And we still have the full functionality here. We can move it around. We can click, pinch, and zoom in, zoom out, that sort of stuff. So while it may have some limitations, it's actually much more functional than the Google plugin at the time of this recording.